Hey, Screen Junkies. Thank you for joining us for our continued Comic-Con coverage. It's day 2, and it has been panel palooza around here. I'm Roth Cornet. I'm joined by a tired Dan Murrell, but trooping through. Thank you so much.
Yes.
And we are delighted to have Chris Tilley join us from Fandom today, also an old colleague of mine.
Yeah,
We worked
from the
together
IGN
at
days.
IGN.
Yeah.
So it's delicious and wonderful to see you again. We did today, well, you guys saw the Universal panel, which was Halloween and Glass. I was there for Bumblebee from Paramount, and we were all there for Sony, the Spider-Verse and Venom. So let's work our way backwards because Spider-Verse and Venom are most fresh in mind. Spider-Verse, let's just say it, to me, of the footage that I saw, now I wasn't there for Universal, that was the most impressive footage I saw today. This movie looks fantastic. The trailer looked great. There was an extended sequence shown. The animation, we already knew that the animation was looking beautiful. That said, the relationships are there. It's funny. It moves. I think fans are going to be very pleased. What was your takeaway, Chris?
Yeah, well, they had Chris Miller and Phil Lord there, the producers and one of the writers, and they were talking about it being like like walking into a 3D comic book, and that's really what I felt. Like the footage, it kicks off with Miles Morales going to school, and we heard his thoughts pop up, or we saw his thoughts pop up in speech bubbles, like in a comic book, and it just seems like they're using animation to do things that the live-action movies just can't do.
Were you more on board, less on board?
Oh yeah, and they pulled the curtain back on more of what the Spider-Verse is going to be.
Yeah.
You know, the fact that they're embracing the ridiculous elements. We had a reveal of Spider-Ham. We had a reveal of Spider-Man Noir, voiced by Nick Cage.
Yeah, confirmed. And by the way, Dan and I, earlier in the day, did an interview with Jake Johnson and Shamik Moore. And we just asked them a joking question about Nick Cage, and they were very evasive, which I thought this was just known, you know. But then not less than an hour later, it's revealed. How silly.
Very silly. Very silly. And Spider-Ham is voiced by the comedian John Mulaney.
So, yeah.
And they were saying he's going to be a bit of a scene stealer in the film. I think he's going to get the funniest lines. He certainly raised a big laugh when he showed up on screen.
Yeah, it's clearly, look, this is going to be the Spider-Verse, right? So I feel like there might be more to come in that regard. What do you guys think?
I think so, and the other side that this footage that we saw today, we saw the first trailer, the first couple trailers, we saw the kind of cool side, the Miles Morales, Peter Parker relationship side. The comedy was something that they leaned into, and not just like funny lines, but this is embracing the tone of some traditional animation too, sight gags.
Yeah.
You know, a kind of a broader sense of humor that maybe you hadn't seen, but mixing in with it. So I think this is going to be maybe not quite as serious as some people had thought that it could be. It's going to embrace that kind of broadly comic tone as well, which is something that Lord Miller did with the Lego movie. And, you know, we've seen them juggle those things before, but that was what I took away, was seeing that dimension of it, which is that.
And one thing we saw was a different Peter Parker. Jake Johnson was talking about the fact that he called him chubby Peter Parker.
Yeah.
But he's older, he's got a bad back, he doesn't really want to be Spider-Man anymore. And Miles Morales kind of looks up to him as a mentor, a teacher, and you'd expect kind of Peter Parker to want to help, but he doesn't. He's not interested in teaching this kid, but obviously I think that changes over the course of the film. So I think it's interesting to see another side to that character as well.
It is. We did talk with him a little bit about that as well, which we'll show in our show tomorrow. You know, and clearly we walk away knowing that the core relationships, though there are multiple Spider-Men, and yeah, obviously they're going to embrace the humor a little bit when you have Spider-Ham in your film. But the core relationships are going to be between Spider-Gwen, Peter Parker, and Miles. That's set up very clearly. And I had wondered if she was sort of going to be more of a side character, but no, she seems very present.
And she's a badass in this, isn't it?
Yeah.
She was saying that she's cooler, she's tougher, she's better than the two Spider-Men, actually. So she's kind of the top superhero in this movie, from what Haley Steinfeld was saying.
Yeah, actually, they took a little offense to that. She's the smartest one in the room. She's the best. And they're like, well, we're in the room, too.
Yeah.
I really am, this is one of my most highly anticipated films coming up, and certainly out of this con. What would you say?
Yeah, this was not my favorite footage that I saw today, which we'll get to later on. But this was easily my second favorite, and I'm very much looking forward to this movie. The visual style of this movie really, I think, is going to be something else on the big screen.
Chris, you've been in a lot of panels. How does this sit for you?
Well, I wasn't particularly interested in this film going into the panel, and now I'm all about it, I think. And I think what you were saying, the humour. I mean, those guys are so funny, Miller and Lord, and I think it could be one of the funniest films of the year, as well as being one of the most sort of visually spectacular. So I'm into it.
I also have to commend whoever was vetting the questions from the audience, because not a single solo question. I really thought someone would do it, but nobody even made a joke.
I think they were screening at the door to Hall H for people
Yeah.
with solo questions.
Yeah.
Just to be safe.
Well, Sony also had Venom there, and we did see an extended bit. First of all, we'll just peel back the curtain a little bit, and there was a bit gone wrong, and I felt so bad for for really everyone involved. but the idea was to put on this mask.
These Venom masks.
And then
Everyone was supposed to
scream.
get one.
And then there was a second piece to it, which was then you scream.
We are Venom, which is weird
Which
because
is
you just told
obscured
everyone
by
to
the mask.
obscure your mouth with the mask.
Yeah.
But then they didn't hand out the mask.
But then they didn't hand out the mask.
No more.
And so it was a very Comic-Con moment of poor Jess moderating and saying, "Everybody chant," and then going, "No, we don't have the mask."
And I want this tongue to be sticking out.
Yeah.
That's the trick.
You want it
isn't
to be 3D.
It is smart to wear this at Comic-Con, though, in general,
Yeah.
to avoid the con plague.
Oh, that's smart. Yeah.
But not
that's true.
smart to give someone this and tell them to yell.
Yeah. But that brings us to one of sort of what I believe will be the takeaways from this panel and something that people will be chatting about. I'm curious what you guys think of this. I was sitting with a friend of mine and Dan, and who's also a friend of mine, and when when Tom Hardy was speaking, when
Took me a second.
when Tom Hardy
It's
was
late in the day.
when Tom Hardy was speaking as Venom, I found it very difficult to understand what he was saying, and it felt like shades of Bane to me. How about you?
Yeah, ironically, he actually, after the footage screened, he wanted to do a shout out to the sound guys for how great the sound was in the movie. Now, I don't know if this was a Hall H problem and whether it will be better in a cinema or whether they'll clean it up between now and then, because I feel like we've not discussed this, but I totally agree. And I can't believe we're the only people in that audience who couldn't understand a thing he was saying.
Yeah, it was an interesting thing, because I was telling Dan, I remember, and you probably do as well, Chris, when they screened that first 15 minutes of The Dark Knight Rises, and this was the footage that they then cleaned up, right? And it was impossible to understand what he was saying. It was in the entire airplane sequence, and you were just going to your neighbor, wait, what? What was he saying?
I wonder if he has it in his contract that some of his scenes you shouldn't be able to hear.
Yeah.
Something Tom Hardy
Dark
insists
Knight
on,
Rises,
yeah.
This movie, the Legend, he mentioned a movie, he was in
Yeah.
Legend, which we gave the indecipherable Tom Hardy award to, because one of the brothers, we couldn't understand the Revenant. He was he likes to be, he's a man of mystery.
He's a man of mystery. He wants to maintain it. And then, so that was one piece that I took away. But what was your take on the footage overall?
I thought it was surprisingly frightening, actually. They talked about, the director, Ruben Fleischer, talked about it being grounded, gritty, and the most violent Marvel movie so far. And it really was. I mean, it was pretty intense, some of the scenes, I thought, especially that final little note at the end when he was in the grocery store. I mean, that was really, really horrific. So I was surprised at that, but equally, I like my horror, so that's kind of got me interested.
Have they made a rating announcement on this movie yet? Like, have they definitively said? Because I don't know how this is. If this is not an R-rated movie, then I feel like the things that got people the most excited about this movie, the impact is going to be gone,
Right.
because that's what people were like. With the Venom was the viciousness of this character, but they also were very careful to play. You know, they said that this is very closely based on Venom Lethal Protector, which is the storyline in which he's the hero, and Tom Hardy kept referred to him repeatedly as a hero, although the footage that we saw distinctly said that there are enough superheroes.
Yeah, and the director said there are no heroes.
No
in the
heroes.
movie.
There are no
Yeah,
heroes
yeah.
in the movie, but it does seem like the movie itself is going to treat Venom as the hero of that
this
movie.
story.
Right,
Yeah.
of that story.
Because
exactly.
I think he's going to be, I mean, and it's such an overused term, but he's going to be a complicated hero, because he certainly is biting heads off, which people are delighted by.
Yes.
And that was a piece of the footage that everyone loved. That said, you know, there is a villain in Riz Ahmed's character. So I know Ruben Fleischer was playing it coy and saying these are very complicated characters, it's all shades of gray, but that shades of gray means that there's room for Venom to sort of sit in the place of what would be the hero protagonist, even if he is murderous hero protagonist.
The anti-hero, I
Right.
guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's bad, but Riz Ahmed is badder.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The worst. Also, it felt to us,
Yeah.
Dan.
Oh,
yeah.
sorry. I was gonna say the one big confirmation they did was that he is playing Riot, who
Yeah.
is another symbiote. We saw a few shots of them facing off against each other, which sort of again says like they may not be heroes, but there's going to be a good guy and a bad guy. And then they also they said they would not confirm or disconfirm that there are other villains in the movie, but that they are looking to build the Venom universe, which I think
Teases Carnage.
teases Carnage pretty
Right?
heavily.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, people were shouting Carnage out from the audience, I
Yeah.
think. And he said no, but in a way that made you think he was kind of saying
Yeah,
yes.
it was kind of like,
Yeah.
no, wink, wink.
Yeah.
I'd be curious to see what you think, what you guys thought of the effects, because that was such a big piece of the conversation when the first teaser was revealed and they didn't show him. And now, do you like the look?
There were some shots in the trailer that I'd be very surprised if that's the finished film, that really looked like it was an animated movie as much as a live-action film. So if they stay as they are, I think people aren't going to be impressed with some of the effects in this one.
It's difficult to know because they said there were some effect shots that were not done.
Okay, yeah.
So I don't know, but you do I feel like the shot that we just saw there, that's already been in a trailer. You would think that that one would probably be about as done, as an effect shot is going to be, because that's what they put out for the first shot of Venom. So he is very. It's definitely not photoreal, I don't think, and we'll see what the final look of the character is. But they're not going for realism, which I guess shouldn't be a surprise.
Sure.
Very
yeah.
glossy. He's a very glossy symbiote.
Did you feel like you walked away with a solid sense of the story that they were telling? Pretty.
Yeah, I think so. I think they gave quite a lot away in that footage, actually.
I did too.
I guess we're not really sure what the villain's plan is, but he's talking about, I guess, overpopulation and it's the last years for
Where
man on Earth.
have we heard that recently?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, so and he in his research to plan for the future, he discovers a symbiote, but I'm not really sure how that all hangs together. But I really like Riz Ahmed as an actor, so I hope he's got something to sink his teeth into, literally.
I do too. And at the end of the panel, they address kind of the giant spider in the room, which is, well, what about Spider-Man? If there are no heroes, what about Spider-Man? And Ruben Fleischer heavily was, I felt, advocating for the idea of Venom facing off against Spider-Man and those two worlds merging eventually, which is interesting. And, they said,
I'm going to get you the quote while you're
oh,
talking.
please, thank you
Yeah,
very
yeah. The
much.
one I wrote down, he says something like, "At some point along the road, they're going to cross each other's paths." That's not a studio, but very much not. Tom Hardy had a fun bit when they said,
Yeah.
"Would you like to fight Tom Holland?"
And he was like,
"Yeah."
I'll give it a go.
Yeah,
Give it a go.
he said, "Go toe to toe with Tom Holland. I'll have a go. Yeah, you've got to have a go, ain't you?"
Yeah.
That's such a Tom Hardy thing to say.
He was basically laughing at the concept of him punching
Yeah.
Tom Holland, I think.
Those are, look, from what we saw from Homecoming and what we've seen of this footage, those are very distinct worlds. That
Tonally, they're not.
Tonally, yeah.
They're very different. But as Fleischer said, he said, "I think we can all agree it'd be pretty amazing to see Spider-Man and Venom face off in a film. I have to think the studio is thinking the same way."
Well, now they are, because you put it in the press and you're making them think the same way.
Yeah.
Whether they actually are or not is I think, a very complicated question for Sony right now, and particularly with how they're moving forward with Spider-Man and how he's moving forward in the MCU.
But I imagine the Spider-Man movies are going to get darker as he gets a bit older, and he starts facing sort of tragedies of his own. And then I think if you want to take him to a really dark place, that's when you cross him over with this character in this world.
Yeah, well, if this movie is successful, and I think, they said, make it happen, fans, and I think we felt a little like, we're not the ones holding this back.
Yeah, that's true. Just like, yeah, they literally said, like, it's up to you guys to make this happen. We're like, I'm not a lawyer. I don't.
Yeah.
I can't do
It's
that.
kind of up to you guys to make a good film, if we're honest.
Yeah.
They did kind of forget somebody when it was first brought up. I forget if it was Ruben Fleischer said, like, I've always thought it'd be cool to see Spider-Man and Venom face off in a film. And I remember Rox and I looked at each other like,
Didn't we?
Yeah.
I feel like
Yeah,
that
it didn't really work.
It didn't work
we
that,
did.
remember? I recall.
yeah.
We also saw Are we good on Venom?
Yes.
Do we feel
I'm
complete?
done. I'm
very
done.
Okay, good. We did see a good bit of footage from Bumblebee.
Yeah.
I have to say, as far as a panel goes, John Cena, not surprisingly, stole the show of
Did
the
he?
panel. You
Okay.
don't think so?
Well, when you kick off your
Twist.
panel with Stan Bush singing The Power. The
okay.
Touch.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
Live.
come
Come
on.
on.
Yeah.
That's how you kick off a panel.
Well,
and then
actually-
you end a panel with Peter Cullen,
Yeah.
aka Optimus Prime,
Yes.
talking in his Optimus Prime voice.
Well, let's talk
pulled it
about
this
that. Okay, you're right. Those were great buttons on the panel, but beef, like the middle of the sandwich, the beef
Yeah.
of it, I felt that
John
John
Cena.
Cena
It's the beef in the middle
was
of
the
every
beef in the
sandwich.
middle of every sandwich. Yeah. Let's talk about that end though, because
Okay.
I will say that bringing him out. Let's set the stage,
Okay.
please.
Well, they after they showed the footage, they then took questions from the audience, and they were pretending they were ending the panel, and said, "Oh wait, we've got one more question." And they cut to the audience, and it was Peter Cullen, who most people recognised, and then as soon as he spoke, everyone recognised the voice of Optimus Prime asking a question as Optimus Prime. And I think, what was he say? He said, "What's an Autobot got to do to get his own movie?"
Yeah, and then he said, well, why don't you, Travis Knight, who many of you may know from Kubo and the Two Strings, Leica, he started Leica, said, well, show me your emotional range. And he followed up with,
I can't
let's do
remember.
your best Optimus
He just
Prime.
said, this is like, he's like, show me elated joy.
Yeah.
It was just him saying the opposite. Was like,
Yeah.
I am
elated
elated to
to
be
be
here.
here.
But then
That was bad.
I thought
I really thought this
they
was
were like,
the setup
and
for
guess
the
what?
reveal of it.
He's getting a movie. No.
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 It was such a. I mean, because it was a very
Yeah.
fun moment, but it felt like a stunt that was there to reveal an Optimus movie. But
Well, especially
maybe
as they teased the fact that actually Optimus Prime is in Bumblebee,
Yeah.
but only in holographic form.
Yes.
So I thought there might have been more to that they would
Yeah.
then have revealed. Actually, he's going to have a scene in the movie, but
yeah.
My favorite was the 12-year-old kid who walked up to the mic and like either had the innocence of a 12-year-old or perfect comic timing and said, I have a question for John Cena, but I can't see him.
That was my favorite moment too.
That was great.
And there were about 4 questions in a row that were all for Cena, and it was clear that he was stealing the show. But I will say, of the footage itself, I want to get your take on that. The interesting thing about that moment, though, in terms of Optimus Prime, is that there is this will they or won't they around it. Clearly, everything depends on how Bumblebee does as a standalone, and they've talked about Optimus as a potential other standalone movie.
yeah.
Yet, even in that exchange, they addressed the challenges around that, which is that Optimus stands as this stoic figure of leadership, difficult to create a really dynamic emotional story around him.
Are you saying he's boring?
I didn't say Optimus is boring. I would never say that. I do think it's interesting that they sort of address the challenges in that moment. But as far as Bumblebee itself goes as a movie, how did you feel before watching this footage, and how do you feel now?
Well, I'm not a huge fan of the Transformers movie, but the trailer that they released a little while ago, I thought had real ET vibes. I was kind of into it, and then the way they talked about this movie, he said it's a Spielbergian coming of age story, and I really like that. So it's a different kind of Transformers film, but I think one that's going to have a bit more heart and soul than the Michael Bay movies. So I really like the footage. I was kind of. I thought that the relationship between Haley Steinfeld's character and Bumblebee seemed really sweet and real, and John Cena seemed like a fun villain. And even the action I preferred to the Michael Bay Transformers action. I find a bit incoherent and hard to understand. Whereas this action seemed a bit cleaner and a bit clearer about sort of what was happening.
And
Yeah.
I think Travis Knight threw some subtle Michael Bay shade at the
Oh,
beginning.
he
of this,
threw
'cause
shade.
He came out and he's just like, a lot of times with robot action, if it's shot too frenetically, if you just can't tell, he said it's like watching 2 Radio Shacks reenact the Kama Sutra, which is a great line, but not as good as Spencer J. Gilbert's like 2 junkyards having sex with each other. That's the second best description I've heard.
Which makes me feel like he maybe heard that somehow. I,
think-
have no
maybe he's not a
idea.
show fan. I don't know. But I felt like the footage that we saw was at its best when it showed that relationship, because I thought it was a more heartfelt version of the relationship between Bumblebee and Shia LaBeouf in
Yeah.
the first Transformers
And
movie.
it felt very ET as well.
It
It
did,
did.
yeah. But then the
Very,
action
yeah.
that I saw, which looked like another Transformers
Yeah.
movie. So it's like, what's the balance going to be, and how are you going to handle that? Because
Yeah.
I saw what looked like a cool relationship, and then mixed intercut with robots turning into jets and shooting missiles and
Yeah.
rolling around and jumping and hitting each other and, you know.
But they turn into cars
And
and
jets.
planes.
Triple changers.
Triple
The
changers.
Decepticons are
Poor
triple
Joe Starr,
changers.
though.
Yeah, well, a little bit of bad news for
Yeah.
our own Joe Starr, who's
Mm-hmm.
not with us tonight. He's at another event, and sad news for fans of Transformers, that is not Starscream. Travis revealed, as
No.
everybody thought it was.
It's Blitzwing.
Blitzwing.
Yeah. a
Did I say
different Decepticon.
Stream, not Scream?
I
Who
don't know.
knows? Anyway, it's not Starscream.
Either way.
It's not. Yeah. So the audience was pretty
Pretty bummed.
disappointed with that. But then there was some kind of exciting news in that they said that the film will spend some time on Cybertron.
Yes,
as
I
well.
thought that was great.
Yeah, that's pretty exciting.
For me, what I think that Travis's background and the kinds of stories that he tells, you can feel that here a little bit. I do think they gave him some kind of leeway. They're obviously going to be very precious about this franchise, Paramount especially. They need it, is the fact. So I felt in the animation just on Bumblebee's face that his background, that's where I really saw it come through, because I was immediately taken with him. I immediately felt that, and it was very pointed. You want me to love him. You want me to want to hold him as if he's my cat. I did. He was very vulnerable as a character, and it was clear that there was a lot of emotion between them. So I feel like that was very, very effective. The story as a whole, it's hard to tell, because I think they are holding a lot back about it.
Yeah.
You know, they were being pointedly evasive.
Yeah, I
Yay
think
or nay?
I think it's what we said is with what happened with the last night. It's now all on this.
It's
movie.
all on this
So they
movie.
can't really delve too much deeper into anything that's not this movie, or that
Yeah.
could be world building, because they don't know.
They don't know, and that studio is in a position right now where financially, they really need this to work.
Yeah.
And the thing I felt about it is it's a bit more of a kids' film as well.
yeah.
It does seem like it's aiming a little younger than maybe even the previous Transformers film, which is no bad thing.
It's a Christmas movie. I mean,
yeah.
it's not a summer blockbuster. They're opening at Christmas. You're gonna want to aim at that audience, I think.
And the interesting thing too is that this is obviously set in the 80s. He feels younger. You know, Bumblebee as a character, I think, is one of the younger feeling characters, and that's what Travis said as well, that he's sort of in a perpetual state of adolescence, and that's sort of what Haley's going through, so they mirror each other.
A bit like E.T.
Yeah, a bit like E.T. Exactly. Very much like E.T. I find this alien, at first I'm scared, and now I'm protective, and then they build this relationship and go
And he's
on
learning about the
adventures.
world in the film, isn't he? There was a brief shot of him watching The Breakfast Club.
Yes.
And mimicking Judd Nelson in that. So, yeah, I mean, I thought it was cute.
It was cute.
Yeah.
I agree. Dan?
We'll see. I don't know which way the balance is gonna go.
Okay. Well, we'll see. I will say that I'm such a fan of Leica that I've had my hopeful optimism on from day one, and I continue to. Now, Halloween and Glass. I missed that panel, so you have to tell me everything about it. We did get the Glass trailer, though, and I did watch that. What were your thoughts?
I'm excited about Glass. What we learned today, it seems like a smaller film maybe than I was expecting. I feel like quite a lot of it's going to take place in the hospital that's in the trailer, from the stuff they said. So the trailer kind of centered on this psychiatrist character played by Sarah Paulson interviewing the three protagonists. And I think the idea is that it's all in their head, that they're superheroes, that no one really believes them. But I think it's going to be fun watching those three actors go toe-to-toe. But they really gave away so little in the panel. I mean, Bruce Willis wasn't making a huge amount of sense. And then and the other guys didn't really seem to want to say anything at all about it. I think the only kind of bit of news that came out of it beyond the trailer was the fact that the Beast, James McAvoy, is going to have 21 personalities in this one. So we'll be meeting some new versions of his character.
Yeah, everyone. It was. I think maybe it's because there's things in the film that they don't want to reveal, but it was very much sort of a personality-driven panel in the sense of like, yes, Samuel L. Jackson standing up there or sitting up there, he's cursing, as Samuel L. Jackson does. Bruce Willis sort of just hanging out, chilling, like Bruce Willis does. But yeah, I think that it was really that panel more than anything was sort of the. Look, famous people and a trailer, whereas the one that followed at Halloween, I thought, was a mix of both.
So they didn't show any footage besides the trailer.
Yeah, they
from
just
Glass?
showed the trailer and took some questions and sort of talked about the universe itself, but it was more, not so much like here's some secret hints about the movie.
Yeah, it was a lot of M. Night Shyamalan talking about the birth of the film and the background behind it. But we knew all that stuff because he talked about it, a couple of years ago. So, I was kind of disappointed with the panel, but I liked the trailer. What did you think of the trailer?
I'm intrigued. I feel like he really was having a return to form, starting with The Visit, which was this smaller film, and then certainly with Split. I'm curious, now that he's had the taste of success again, what kind of M. Night are we going to get with this film? So I would say Unbreakable is my favorite of his films. I know that that's like blasphemy for some people, but it really is. And I think a follow-up is welcome in this one. Not every film needs one, but this world does, or could have it, and sustain it. So I'm still very intrigued by it, but I don't think I know quite from the trailer what movie we're going to get. How about you?
I love that he fooled me on Split. I did not see that coming. The fact that not a word of that, at least to my ears, was whispered before that movie came out. I love that he just sprang this surprise on us, and I'm in. I love Unbreakable. I loved what James McAvoy did in Split, and this thing has a lot of moving pieces, and it's a lot of dice that you're rolling here. I'm in. I'm excited. I hope that it's really good. I love this concept of a shared universe that you didn't know was shared. The second film in a trilogy that you didn't know was the second film in a trilogy, and I don't know. I am hoping that M. Night is back and that this third one is going to do something really fun and cool. And we saw, I think you can see in that trailer, a little bit more what you would define as superheroics from Bruce Willis's character, from David. And I agree, that trailer didn't really give away shots. We kind of see things that they're up to, the concept that maybe Mr. Glass and the Beast are teaming up, but at the same time, not a lot to kind of say like, oh, I know exactly what's going on with this movie, which I don't mind.
Yeah, we still don't really have a sense of what the genre is. Because obviously Unbreakable was really a drama with a bit of superheroics thrown in, and Split was a horror film and a drama, and then this one, they could have gone down the superhero route full on with a bigger budget, but they haven't gone in that direction. I remember I asked Jason Blum a while ago what if it was horror, and he said it's definitely not a horror movie they're making this time out. So it kind of looks like maybe like an action thriller. As you say, there seemed to be some shots of action in it, didn't there? The Beast sort of really using his strength and power, and David using his powers, his strength as well. So I'm still not really got a sense of where it fits genre-wise.
I'd be very curious to see this one. One that I am, and I think a lot of people are very much anticipating, is Halloween. This may be, I love horror films. There's all kinds of horror films that I watch and enjoy. That said, this may be the most basic opinion in the world. I don't care. Halloween stands as my favorite horror film of all time, period. I really think certainly it was a genre changer. Now, the return is a big deal because there have been several Halloween films that were more and less successful since then. I happen to be a defender of 3. I think it's just a different movie. That said, I didn't see any of the footage. Are my hopes in vain, or should I be excited?
The footage they showed from Halloween was my favorite footage that I saw today. It was basically a 3 or 4 minute unbroken shot, sort of starting with the shot you've seen from the trailers with the kids running into Michael Myers and then following him through backyards, houses. We get a couple of kills. We see a couple of victims. There's a couple of fake outs. Is he going to go for that person? No. Is he going to go for that person?
Is he going to go for the baby in the crib?
Yeah, exactly. Like he walks by the baby. Is he going to do this? This is where it's going. And sometimes the camera will stop and he'll walk away from the camera and you're like, where's he going? The framing, they did a couple things.
Yeah, kills happening off camera around the corner. And you'll kind of want to see it and you don't see it. You see the aftermath. And, it's directed with such style by David Gordon Green. It was really impressive.
And I think Jamie Lee Curtis, she was on fire, and she seemed genuinely. And I know that every actor not every actor, a lot of actors come through and they're always excited about this project. But she was fired up. She was on fire. about this, how excited she was about this narrative. And the thing that she kept stressing, and I don't know if this was something that, was something that she was like coached to underscore, or if it's what the approach that she liked, but she kept stressing her character, Laurie Strode, the victim of a random act of violence. And she kept on saying, the events in Halloween were a random act of violence, a random act of violence. Basically erasing this mythology aspect of it. Like she was targeted but the fact that this is a character who was victimized 40 years ago, completely at random, and has spent the last 40 years waiting for the night when he comes back. And she used the phrase, taking the narrative of her life back and not being the victim anymore.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a real character study of her. She was talking about the fact that, after this happened, she didn't get any support, any help. This is a woman who's suffered trauma. She's suffered PTSD. She's had a daughter and had her daughter taken away from her, she revealed. And so she's gone to hell and back, and she's waited 40 years to have the opportunity to fight Michael Myers because no one believes that he's coming back except her. And so she's been waiting. So it sounded really dramatic and horrifying, really, as a jumping off point for, the horror to come.
And I think they're also playing with, obviously, John Carpenter's coming back to do the music. They talked to, and obviously as part of the project, but also doing the music. They talked a little bit about that. But then they showed a bit of a tease after this long sequence that we saw. Some more shots, some of the stuff we've seen in the trailer, some of the stuff we haven't, but even you can tell the DNA of the original Halloween in this movie. There's a reference, a kind of a mirror shot. One of my favorite shots in the original Halloween, Michael Myers in the closet, and the light kind of slowly comes up and you see his face. They seem to have sort of mirrored that in this one with Laurie Strode, and there's a very similar shot with the similar music cue, and it seems like, it can always kind of go the way of being a recreation to the point where it doesn't seem original, but I loved what we saw of it, and it looks like David Gordon Green is really approaching it with a passion for the material, but really wanting to bring a new aesthetic to it in the sense of like telling his own story here. I've been excited about this movie. I loved the style of what they showed us, and I remain excited about this.
I know we'll have to wrap it up here in a minute, but Dan, you talked earlier about your favorite moment from the panel, which sounds like it was pretty extraordinary.
Yeah, there was, they do the Q&A, and there's a gentleman that came up, obviously very emotional and actually sort of cut himself short, but wanted to address Jamie Lee Curtis and said that he was at the convention today because Halloween had, in essence, saved his life, that he, many, many years ago, had been in a situation where there was a home invasion and he panicked and it popped into his head because Halloween was a favorite of his. What would Laurie Strode do? How would she, and he basically kind of said that he got the just sort of wherewithal to get himself out of that situation, drawing from that character, and that he had come to Comic-Con just to speak with her. And like I said, he couldn't really finish what he was saying, but Jamie Lee Curtis came off the stage and just went to the side and literally was just like holding his face in her hands, and they shared a couple of minutes talking to each other. And it's one of those things, I wouldn't be surprised, number one, if Comic-Con makes that moment available publicly, because that is a very viral moment. It's one of those moments where it's like, that is almost too good to be true.
Yeah.
And for that man to be able to
Have that
have that moment is pretty
That's
extraordinary.
amazing.
Yeah.
What final thoughts from you, Chris, on the day of panels?
I need to go to bed.
Oh.
I'm shattered. That was not that I'm complaining. I love being at Comic-Con, but yeah, when they're back to back like that, it's tiring. But I liked everything I saw. There wasn't one where I thought, oh, that's a turkey, or I'm not looking forward to that one. So it was a really nice day, and like you, I think Halloween's the one I'm probably most excited about that I saw today.
Well, that gives me a lot of enthusiasm and hope to add to the enthusiasm I already had for this film. We want to say thank you guys for joining us here during our Comic-Con coverage. Thank you, Chris, for joining us today.
Pleasure.
As many of you know, we lost a friend today in Jon Schnepp. We ask you to please continue to support Holly, to support Collider. They're doing a live stream of Jon's work to support the friends and family of Jon Schnepp and each other. We did a video about it earlier today. We will continue to put the GoFundMe link in our descriptions below. Comic-Con was Jon's place. He loved it. And with that in mind,
Be back for
we'll
day
be back
three.
for day 3. Thank you guys so much again.